to have you join us today. It is Friday, and we have a guest that we have not had in over a year, and I have been missing. I have been fiending for some Aysha Upchurch on Beyond the Steps, and I'm so happy to have her.
Oh, I have been missing you too. Thank you for having me back.
Thank you so much for coming. We are super excited to talk about taking a two-step. You see how we did that? A two-step back from the trends and grounding history and hip hop dance classes. This is an important topic. We are here in Black History Month, and we all know that our hip hop culture is grounded in Black history. Our history is American history. Hip hop history is Black history, Black and Latinx history. Let's talk. Let's go ahead and expand it because we are brothers and sisters here in this space, and we are so happy to address this topic today. So I want to introduce Aysha for those of you who have not had the opportunity, the honor, and the privilege to know all of the wonderful things about Aysha. Look at her face, so humble, so humble. I love it. I love it. I love it. Aysha Upchurch is an entrepreneur, artist, educator, and consultant who creates, facilitates, and designs for radical change. She's a seed planter and soil agitator, a soul agitator too, but a soil agitator who weaves her passion into her commitment to critical arts pedagogy, youth advocacy, social justice, and transformative education. Radical change means shaking up the old, expanding the boundaries of what's possible, and centering the joy in the process. Y'all, I'm going to say that again, the joy in the process. Pause for the cause. Whether on stage or in the classroom or boardroom, Asia is quite literally on the move to show what it means to be dope, dismantling oppression, pushing education. It is great to have you back, Asia.
Thank you so much, Melissa. Great to be back. And thank you for that warm introduction on a well, today it's cold, but we're gonna get it hot in here.
I do want to say if you are joining us today, please like, share, and subscribe. Spread the message. We've been doing this work for 3 years now and just are so proud of everybody that we have reached with the knowledge and information that we have talking about topics from psychology to nutrition to sex abuse prevention to racism to integrative dance and, of course, dance medicine and science. I'm Melissa McDaniel Grisham from Turning Point Dance Creations, and I'm usually joined by my amazing host, Bree Zabrowski from Apollo Performance, but Homegirl had a year that was epic and she deserves a vacation today. So she is on vacay and she will be back with us soon. I want to start, Aysha, by you telling us about the word dope and how you use it as an acronym.
Well, don't mind if I do. um, so dope. I grew up hearing the word, like, and I'm not from Cali, I'm from St. Louis, Missouri, but like it's just a word I find that has really traveled well and sustained well and like colloquialisms. Like that's dope, like an adjective, like that's cool, that's fresh, that's hot word. And so I use it a lot. And a few years ago, somebody charged me or invited and challenged me to think about how I could kind of flip the word into being a representation of of my approach to being an educator, to being a facilitator, an artist, just a human who's trying to, like, as my mama say, leave a place better than you found it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I like acronyms. I love alliteration, all types of mnemonic devices to help ground meaning. And so the letters spell out dope for me, and it's probably flipped and probably not accurate. You probably can't see it, but a shout out to the red, black, and green Black History Month. But it's dismantling oppression and pushing education. And then I say verb. So I say use dope as a verb, which means we always have to be in the practice, in the action of trying to affect change. And so it can't just be a descriptor of something that's at an arrived state
Mm-hmm.
or an adjective. So I'm just trying to like flip and play with grammar and all of that. My homies sometimes call me like a word nerd or a grammar nerd. So it's like a little bit of a remix on that to say that I am dope means that I am actively and intentionally through my work
Mm-hmm.
dismantling oppression and pushing education. And education also, I don't situate that to only mean in the formal kind of brick and mortar places called school buildings, because a lot of the really formative and transformative nuggets of wisdom, of insight that I've gained in my life has been in powerful sites of learning and education that are outside of those buildings. So we should be pushing and doing in any space that we're in, turning that into a radical classroom, so to speak. So
Mhm.
that's all that goes into being dope.
Yes, yes, yes. And we're gonna talk about, can we buy that cup somewhere? Is that just an exclusive Aysha Upchurch? Okay, okay, we'll talk about that later,
Yeah.
because we want to make sure that everybody has one of those in their office if they possibly can, or in their bedroom. It'd be great. Talk a little bit about education and understanding hip hop education. I want to move into talking about my training years, not to date myself, in the late 80s and
Let's go
90s.
80s.
Yes, yes. Hip hop dance was not even an offering. I mean, that was not on the schedule in
Right.
my dance studio, at least in the
Mine
South. I
either.
don't know what was happening on West Coast and North, and in your Midwest. You looks like you're shaking like, nah, I wasn't in the Midwest either.
No.
And now it's become like a must-have offering in most curriculums, and often one of the most requested classes. I mean, I know in my studio space it is packed,
Mhm.
from the lower ages all the way up into the oldest kids. Why do you think the idea of offering and learning hip hop dance grew in popularity?
Yeah, so just a little bit of context, as we're talking about, like, before we like get caught up in the trims, to really ground in history. So I'm going to do a really gross um, kind of timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So when we think about hip hop and dance and social dance, uh, it's that these forms were not created in studios. They were the language, the expressive language being lived and expressed through the bodies of young people in
Mm-hmm.
various cities, like metropolitan areas. So beyond the like typical Genesis story of New York, you've got other sites across the country where young folks are taking those historical moves that they've learned from auntie, grandma, and them, things that they're seeing on movies, and remixing and creating social dances. And that's been staple to African diasporic movements and from the jump. And so when hip hop hits the scene, and I'm talking about the commercial scene, and
Mm-hmm.
predominantly like thinking about music, and then music videos in, hello, shout out the 80s,
Yes.
we start getting a visual backdrop of this movement that is really catchy. And it is very energetic, and it invites you to like moving your body in a way that I think a lot of kind of Western norms on how your body should be in space. It's like hip hop dance cuts across that. It challenges, it pushes back. It says, get down on the floor. It says, bend your knees. It says,
Mm-hmm.
lean in. And that comes from the posture of the very people in the communities where that is the way that you live your life, in a grounded, leaning in type of place. And so it's appealing, even if you don't think you want to do that. It's appealing because it is a counter story. It is a
Mm-hmm.
counter narrative to the way that bodies are. So you have your OGs who are touring, and like breaking crews are touring and whatnot, but then you start getting into this thing happening with the music where you have rap, or predominantly R&B and pop, excuse me, to start. They're having dancers who are doing this movement that is starting to pull from those steps,
Uh-huh.
you know. And so commercial industry always wants what's cool, transact on that, make a buck from that.
Mm-hmm.
And it starts being called different things. Like, I think Broadway Dance Center was one of the first places to offer something in this realm before it was called hip hop dance, something like street jazz
Street jazz,
in
yeah.
like late 80s, like 89. That becomes a phenomenon. You start seeing these musicians, like, these icons like Janet Jackson, like you name them, they have these dancers behind them that are doing this movement. And the bodies that are doing this movement and wanting to do it are going to places like dance studios. These are not people like me growing up in the hood. Like, I don't need to go to a
Right.
dance studio to learn these. My studio is my front porch, it's the
Mm-hmm.
playground, it's the rec center. But folks who have access to studio life and culture and can afford it are creating a demand. And then a supply is concocted by folks who may not be the OGs and the originators, but folks whose bodies are approximating, and I'm borrowing from Brenda Dixon Gottschalk,
Mm-hmm.
an assimilated notion of these street dances that have been, kind of commercialized. And so you see this trend happening. And their studios, they're entities, they are organizations, they are businesses that have to make money. And so you
Right.
start seeing what's catchy makes money. And so you start seeing something that really, really took off as music videos and budgets for them went crazy in the 90s and early 2000s. People want to move like that. Oh, now you see who the choreographer is. They're teaching here and there. You start getting these dance conventions like Monsters of Hip Hop. And
Yeah.
so studios are like, we can't have that convention, but we can have a class.
Right.
And so I think that's just, it's important for me to provide, again, that's not all the nooks and crannies. And I want to be clear that people can do research and fill that in. But I want to just give that context as to why that swell of energy behind a hip hop dance class has been happening. And that I don't think it'll go away because, again, how the dance moves, it's attractive. Everybody wants to do it. So studios are like, let's put it on our roster. And so you get it being a cash cow, quite honestly, for a lot of studios. But you also have some good teaching that's going on. You have some teaching that maybe we can interrogate a little bit.
Right. Right. And with that, you know how things get watered down when they need to be mass produced. It's the
That
same,
part.
just like a product. The service is the same. When you have to mass produce it, it becomes something I need to do with low overhead, and as great a return as I possibly can. So, do you think that a lot of these programs were put in place without any regard for the actual culture of hip hop?
100%. 100% true. Yes, eat all of the above, because also you still have this other kind of narrative happening around this movement and this music that predominantly Black and brown bodies are the generators of. It still wants to be like, it wants to be cool, but also it needs to be the scapegoat for what's wrong with
Mm,
America's youth, read white youth, who are attractive to this thing. And so there's no historical grounding because they're just transacting on its coolness. And
mm-hmm,
also, the folks who founded this didn't know that they were creating something that would become this huge cash prize. So
mm-hmm.
they're not thinking, and this is no slight against our OGs, but they weren't thinking, you know what, let's document this, let's codify this, and let's protect this intellectual property. They're like, we move and we groove, and somebody gonna pay us, okay. So I think by and large, there was no foresight to invite history to
Mm-hmm.
be taught alongside this very popular, trendy thing that at any moment, a lot of forces were like, it'll go away because it's raunchy, but let it stay because it makes money.
Right. Right. And I think I want to go back and lift up something you said about how, it kind of has to be the scapegoat for all the things that are wrong. And I think that idea has perpetuated the issue or the challenge of not actually going back and saying, okay, there is actual history, there was an actual foundation here, there were pioneers, like you said, there were OGs who did this, and we need to go back and pick that up and pull it in, because if we do begin to talk about the royalty that created this, then we actually have to say, well, you know what, it wasn't bad.
Right. Right.
We can't give it the value, because if we give it the value, we actually have to give it the value to the people who created it.
Yeah.
We know that that's a systemic problem, to give value to Black and brown people in this country
Yeah.
for their history in dance, finance,
Yeah.
everyday life. Giving value to Black and brown people has always been a problem. So I think that idea perpetuates the challenges that we have with putting or encouraging people to incorporate history into the programs across the country. Okay, we own it, y'all. We're getting there. We're getting
Yeah.
there.
And I mean, just like, again, also, every every dance form has a history.
Mm-hmm.
And so it also, I think, opens up the door for us to ask, like, how can every dance form take a two-step, a tendu, a shuffle, a whatever back and go, am I representing what informed this form?
Mm,
Or am I just trying to get people's bodies to bend into these shapes?
mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, listen, ballet started somewhere. And in some ways, ballet may be considered having an ethnic root and form. And so we also, I think we want to be careful not to flatten the dynamic history of any form. And we have to learn and be prepared to tell the nuances,
Mm-hmm.
the good, the bad, the in between, to what
Right.
got us here. And in my experience of giving people some nuggets and developmentally digestible nuggets, right? There's the language I can use with 5-year-olds, and there's language I can use with 55-year-olds. But in my experience, nobody's had less of a good time, been less attracted to wanting to study it when they are learning alongside historical grounding.
Right. Right. I mean, I think it makes it a more rich experience when you're learning alongside historical grounding. I think that makes a big difference. For those of you who are just joining us, this is Beyond the Steps, and we are talking to Aysha Upchurch about taking a two-step back from the trends and grounding our hip hop programs in historical context. So, if you are watching, please like, share this episode. We want everybody to hear it. Put your questions and comments in the chat. We would love to see those. And I want to take a two-step back to the previous question and we talked about the historical foundation, and every dance form has a historical foundation. It started somewhere, like you said. And I will go ahead and say that there are people in this industry, a good number of people in this industry, who would not dare teach something without crediting Balanchine, or would not dare teach a technique. Oh my God, Martha Graham. This came from Martha Graham. This is Graham technique. Wouldn't dare do it. And are so quick to not do it
Mm-hmm.
when they teach hip hop. How
Mm-hmm.
do we make that parallel for people like, hey, you being mad disrespectful when you're so big on this but not big on that? How do we get people to see that? Or is it even possible to get people to see
Okay, so my rose-colored glasses self goes, of course it's possible.
that?
But that rose-colored optimism is grounded by me living in this real world. And that person says it is mandatory.
Mm,
Um, because I think if we ask ourselves, and this is a question that I've started asking various artists and dancers and dance educators over the past year, like, if I asked you what do you teach, you can't tell me like a genre or dance style. Like what is it that you think you are teaching actually, right?
mhm,
So then like I'm not showing up as Aysha, she's gonna teach you hip hop dance. I can facilitate you learning some things, but what I actually think I'm there to do is to help you get in tune with your body and to help you get connected with this very specific cultural form and practice. And
mhm.
I have to recognize that you may not come from that same rooted background. And if you do, it's still quite possible and probable that you're not aware of what informs that form and is gonna give you an invitation to put it on your body, right? So I was born almost completely turned in with
Mhm.
extremely bow legs, just a little bit of a freak show to the point where they wanted to break my legs and reset them and be like, take two.
Right.
Yeah, yes. You know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
So my mom took me to the Shriners Hospital and they were like, maybe we can wait this out. Right. And so I just have all these baby photos of like H's legs, like they had to document my progress of how am I naturally
Mhm.
growing out of it. And in the most bizarre way, Divine, I believe that me taking dance and sports, but dance helped me. I don't want to say correct because I don't think the way that I was born was wrong, but I think it helped me find a healthier way because being that turned in is actually painful. But all that to say, I'm excited about my turnout, right?
Mhm.
I think it would have benefited me to have learned ballet, which is one of the first forms I studied actually in a formal way. I think it would have better informed me to learn and understand what and why and how turnout developed so that I wasn't cursing my body for not being able to be
Right.
perfect. Like you just presented a shape but I don't know like how. If I'd have known like that, that's how they stood at court, I
Mm-hmm.
might have been able to put on what would it be like for Aisha to stand at court instead
Mm-hmm.
of me trying to get my chocolate, muscular, turned in body to look like the white, light, skinny
Mm-hmm.
ones that are on the wall and in the movies, and that feels so inaccessible. The history for me would have provided me an on ramp through imagination
Mm-hmm.
to embody how the form developed. Okay. So with hip hop, like as I have had students ask me this, like, but if I don't come from where crump developed, is it right for me to learn it? I go, I'm showing you the history of it so you can appreciate why the technique and the form is the way it is.
Right.
Maybe that's going to offer you an on ramp to go, where can I find that need to release that is so guttural, that is so in the pelvis, right? I'm not asking you to act like you grew up in Watts because you
Right.
didn't. I'm
Right.
saying, understanding this history, what might you allow your imagination to unlock for you to embody the form that is informed by cultural practice?
Right.
So that's, I can't be more concise about that because I think it was a beautiful entry point for you to say how some people are balancing this and Martha Graham this. Well, the flip of that is that they stole from bodies of color. Martha
Mm-hmm.
Graham didn't invent half the stuff that she's cited for, but it's convenient to give a white washed, pun intended, history
Mm-hmm.
because then you don't have to get into the complexities of robbing cultural practice from brown bodies.
Right. Right. Exactly. And the comfort is what we challenge here on this show, and we need to challenge as a country or as a world. But we need to challenge globally, but specifically talking about the United States, we have to challenge that comfort zone. And I
Yeah.
think that is what has in dance has led us to where we are now, having to do shows like this, not just necessarily about racism and hip hop, but just all dance, medicine, and science, the comfort zone of how we teach kids and how we're
Yeah.
damaging their bodies. The mindset shift that we need to have in the industry, where we're teaching kids to starve themselves, and good eating is no eating, and those types of things, which are perpetuated, and they're perpetuated
Hmm.
because it's comfortable. That's what my teacher taught me, so that's what, so
I'm
on and so
doing.
forth. And the
Hmm.
same thing here with these hip hop programs. I mean, now I guess we're going on 20 years ish of having hip hop as in some form or fashion as a
Hmm.
major offering. And like you said, it was developed in a situation where, okay, oh, I got to make this money. All right, hey, you teach hip hop, or even worse, hey, you're black, come here. You're gonna teach this hip hop class, but I'm a tap dancer. It's okay. We're going on that, and that's been the comfortable way that we have formed our hip hop programs moving forward. But we have to get out of this space of comfort.
Yeah, and just really quickly to tie into that, um, there's a way to listen to the discomfort without creating a really sexy invitation to a shame and guilt paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
My first few years teaching, I knew I was a good mover. I know I'm an energetic teacher, but I didn't know the history either.
Mm-hmm.
Now you got a choice. Sit in that mire and go, well, I feel bad, so I'm gonna just keep going, or this feels too daunting, so I'm just not gonna do anything different. Or I can go, I can choose to course correct without displacing joy,
Mm-hmm.
without making students feel uncomfortable to learn a more developed story, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I just want to make sure folks are hearing that this ain't about shaming and finger point. And though, and I'm gonna tell you, with soapboxes and other spaces, I'm here to do that in a transformative way, again, in a dope way. I don't do it just to like, you was wrong and you was wrong. That's not transformative, right?
Right.
That's just you wrong. And so if folks are willing to listen to the discomfort to get feedback, it then might be able to become instructive with what can you do with where you are to do
Mm-hmm.
something a little different than honors. And I want to invite the word honor, right? I want
Yes.
to honor the form. I want to honor the culture. I want to honor the OGs. So I
Mm-hmm.
can talk to you about Martha Graham and I can talk to you about Pearl Primus.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Not making these things exclusionary, but I'm going to put them in conversation with each other so that students can get an understanding of how complexly and nuancedly dance and culture are always developing and informing each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. If you are just joining us, we're talking to Aysha Upchurch about how to take a two-step back from current trends and ground your hip hop dance program in history. This has been an amazing conversation. If you did not get to catch the beginning of it, these episodes are on YouTube and on Facebook at Apollo Performance and at TP Dance Creations. So make sure that you go back and watch the entire episode. It has been fire, y'all. I want to get into the meat of what we're talking about. How do we do this? What are there? I'm sure there's dance educators out there who are like, okay, this is nice, but I have no idea what the first steps are. So we can you give us, maybe two or three of the first steps to take toward grounding your hip hop program in factual history?
Yeah. Step one, ask yourself and sit and wait for the real answer, not the cute performative one.
Mm-hmm.
Ask yourself, am I willing and ready to do this?
Mm-hmm. Mm.
You cannot take my toolbox and run with it. Baby, I've been teaching for 22 years. I've been developing this over time.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, I had to ask myself, I came to a point where I had to be honest and go, am I willing and ready to make some changes in my teaching to better reflect the history and the pedagogy of hip hop culture in my hip hop classes in dance studios?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, one, ask yourself if you're willing and you're ready. If
Mm-hmm.
you're not willing and ready, keep asking yourself just that one question until you are. Don't go on to anything else I'm going to say.
Mm.
Okay.
Right.
Step two, I would like to allow me to reintroduce myself. I would like to reintroduce for folks this wonderful little tool called the World Wide Web.
Yes. Never heard of it?
You ain't got to even try to find where your local library is and sift through the Dewey Decimal System card catalog.
Do they even still do that? I guess they do. You have to.
I
That's
don't even, I was just, I don't even know. I don't even know if they still have call numbers on books. I'm not sure. But I'm not being trite when I'm saying this, but this is one of the ways where we meet the world where it is to give us a branch to get that information to affect what we do in the future, right?
mm-hmm.
You can look up, there's more sources now. There are folks who have written things, there are documentaries on the Rooted. I'm thinking of Rooted, a book Mansell Durden has written. There's so many others. Like I'm like looking. I'm I'm a voluntary nerd, even if I weren't teaching because of the honor, right? So I just look up things and reach out to people. There also the wonderful thing about the wonderful World Wide Web is the social medias and something that they call direct messaging. Now, I'm too much of an auntie to be saying DM because that makes me feel sleazy. But you can send messages directly to people and introduce yourself and ask and let them know you're looking for information. Can you point me somewhere? Right. So I'm thinking about Rennie Harris.
Mm-hmm.
Who I just had the pleasure of like chatting with over the last weekend and thanked him. I reached out to him via email in the early 2000s. I was like, I think I want to change the way I teach this hip hop class at my dance studio. You're the OG. What resources can you help me? And it was helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some people might answer you very quickly, others may take time, but you can utilize some agency when you decide, yes, I'm willing and I'm ready. I am able to go online, look up people, and just try to reach out
Mm-hmm.
or get a book, get a video, right? And the third step I would say that folks can do is because you're willing and ready, and you said I will go to step two and I will just start flexing some muscles to research what is out there and make contact with people because people really do hold a lot of this history still. Number three is give yourself some grace to not think you have to invent a whole new wheel.
Right.
You're going to feel maybe a little bit overwhelmed and overcome by information, and you're going to go through that guilt cycle. Honey, let that ride its course. It's actually a shorter ride than doing the third thing, which is to identify one or two small things you can change. One of them, invite a guest in who knows more than you. Deposition yourself, decentralize yourself as the de facto all knowing person, because that becomes a really hard thing for students to unlearn. And they will repeat if they become dance teachers. They'll be scared that they don't know what they don't know and scared to bring people in. So ask other people in. You can
Mhm.
do that. You can do that. Hello. The pandemic taught us that we can reach
Right.
across time zones.
Mhm.
So bringing people in is like a thing you can do where you are with what you have. And the second thing is to ask yourself, what one classroom ritual might I shift? I've
Mhm.
done this in school classes and community classes where I'm like, hey, you all, here's a documentary I found. Just make it an announcement in class. Can you let people know some resource that's coming up? Or
Mhm.
can you say, I'm going to start off today as we do warm up. I'm going to just shout out one fact that I just learned, and we're going to play with that. So just like finding those truly accessible, bite-sized, and digestible nuggets that you can do, right? So, one, are you willing and ready? If you're not, do not proceed to the next one. Two, if you are, do a little research. What are some resources? Who are some people? Instagram, Twitter are great for this. Send them a message. Three, what are one to do two things you can do in your practice right now? One of those that you can do, so this is three part 3A, invite a guest in.
Mhm.
3B, change one ritual in your class to better reflect hip hop. For me, it's ending in a circle.
Mhm. Yep. Yep. So we give homework on this show every single week. We ask our viewers to take one small step over the next 7 days to make progress in this area. I feel like you kind of already gave us some homework. So can we say that maybe the first one is sit down and decide, are you willing
Yes.
and ready to do that? Is that our homework? Can we touch and agree? Can we get churchy and touch and agree?
Yes.
Yes, we
Amen.
can touch and agree that our homework from Aysha Upchurch over the for the next 7 days is sit down and ask yourself, and remember, she said, wait for the answer.
The
Am
real
I
one.
and the real answer, right? Am I willing and ready to do this work? Because it actually is work. To be able to do this, it's rewarding work and necessary work and required work, but it is work.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Aisha, for that homework. We also have homework. Please take the STEPS initiative course. It is free. It's been out there. It has free modules on all of the topics that we talk about: racism, sex abuse and prevention, gender equity, dance medicine and science, nutrition, psychology. It is totally free, and you know we like free. So please, please, please take advantage of that. We want to let you know, Aisha, how can people get in touch with you?
So I want to shout out my parents
Mm-hmm.
because my name is the only one that occurs on the planet together. So AyshaUpchurch.com, Aysha Upchurch. If you put those two names in together, it's probably going to drive you to me. On socials, I am at Aysha Dances.
At Aisha Dances. And do you do consults and things with studios? I know you do workshops and conventions as well.
Yeah, I totally do. Like again, I'm willing and able to do this work because I feel like it helps honor those who've helped me develop my teaching. And so I'd love to help people think about and identify those one to two things that they can do that are sustainable. So please hit me up.
Wonderful. It has been absolutely amazing to have you here again. We cannot wait to have you again because guess what, y'all? This is a series. Asia is going to be back 2 more times, one in March and one in April. And we, please, please, please stay tuned. We're going to announce those dates and those topics very soon. And also remember, we are turning this into a podcast. Beyond the Steps is going to become a podcast. So you can not only watch, but you can listen to what we are talking about on a weekly basis. So be on the lookout for the Beyond the Steps podcast that will be available at all the places where you get your podcast from. If you did not get to watch this full episode recordings are available on YouTube and Facebook at Apollo Performance and at TP Dance Creations. Until next time, and until my lovely co-host Bree gets back, we hope you continue your journey beyond the steps. We will see you next week.